What's going on to all my Outer Range fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, breaking down this 7th episode, which was titled The Unknown, an episode in which we finally get the backstory of Royal. Autumn has a new follower, and the Void, it magically disappears. We're discussing that and so much more in today's breakdown spoiler review. But before we get into the discussion, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel and love early movie reviews, TV breakdowns, and live streams, well, come and join the community today by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And as you all can see on the screen now, if you enjoy what I had to say about this 7th episode, well, make sure you're liking and sharing this review. But more importantly, share your thoughts in the comments of the 7th episode, from favorite moments, least favorite moments, deeper meanings, and of course your thoughts, theories, and predictions about the 8th episode, which, by the way, as I'm recording this, I haven't seen the 8th episode quite yet. We'll be watching it shortly after this, but by the time this video is uploaded, keep an eye out for my review for episode 8, which I'll leave in the description of this video. Y'all ready to talk about this 7th episode? Full spoilers ahead as we open the episode with a flashback of a young boy beating the hell out of another young child, as it is revealed to be Perry beating up Trevor. We see a younger Royal asking Perry, "Tell me, why did you beat him up? Why did you do that?" Perry doesn't have any answers. He can't explain this aggression, which, if you all recall, I mentioned in a couple reviews ago, there is pain. There is an anger problem that Perry has that might have a connection to Rebecca, which we don't get those answers in this particular episode, but I think it speaks to the DNA of this family, which we talked about in episode 3. It's very important as we see Royal begins to explain maybe some of the aggression that he had as a child, but he stops himself as we see a sign on the road that reads, "America tells you that the only things worth knowing are those which can be known. America is wrong." And I cannot praise the transitions and the camera movement enough in this episode as we see a young Perry reading that sign transition to an older Perry in a police car being arrested for his actions, which speaks to it finally caught up to him. And also, when Royal doesn't reveal his aggression, his secrets, it speaks so much about this family history. Let me know your thoughts on the opening. And also, Trevor, how often you get your ass beaten by Perry? I mean, is this like an annual thing? Is this like Pennywise coming up every 7 years? Let's talk about that in the comments. As we see that Perry is taking the full responsibility of the death of Trevor, and we see that Joy asks him what happened to Rebecca. He doesn't give her answers, but he does tell her maybe things aren't gone forever. We'll get into that thought a little bit later as we get back into the episode. That buffalo arrives to the Abbott house yet again, which is definitely some connection to that buffalo. I'm still curious on what it all means. I guess we'll find out in the next episode. We cut into the house where we see complete silence in the Abbott house as they head to the courthouse. And the bill right now is for $500,000, and they use their house and their land as collateral to get him out of jail. And we see that Joy, She doesn't approve. She is disapproved of this decision. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Royal, and I have it in my notes here, if Royal takes his family and just throws himself into the void. That kind of happens a little bit later, which we'll get into. Going back into it, very quick shot, but I don't know if you all noticed when we transition to young Amy, look at that book, and look in particularly what she's drawing in that book. We all been speculating, is Amy and Autumn the same person? Well, that looks like the exact same book that Autumn draws in. Let me know if you all caught that little Easter egg there. Getting back to the conversation, as we see Amy asks her father if he was drunk that night of Trevor's death, and he tells her that he was sober enough and he has full regrets. But big moment as we see Amy asks him what happened to her mom, and he tells her, "I don't know. Had nothing to do with it," which I don't believe him, which brings us to a really great scene. So we see a daughter asking her father what happened to her mother, which transitions to the son asking his father what happened to his wife, as we see Perry tell him, as Royal continues to say, "I don't know what happened to Rebecca." Well, you know what, Royal? I don't believe you. I don't believe your son. The only person I believe in this family is young Amy. But let me know what you all thought about the connections of those two scenes, which, speaking of disbelief, we head over to seeing Luke, who we see Billy mentions that he believes Trevor went into an uncreative part of the world, as he tells Joy a little bit about the hole in the world, as Joy is not letting this case go, and that's a big theme with her in this episode. But it's time for little brother to show big brother that void. He shows him the hole in the ground, and Luke, he has no words. And Luke, he does some crazy things in this episode that we'll get into. But going into a very interesting moment that I have in my notes, as I have here, Mom? who is mom, as we see Autumn on the phone and she says mom, and we see that she runs into Rhett, and we see this conversation between he telling her, your brother's going to be okay. And he says, F you, Autumn, as she walks away. But again, I want to go back to mom. Now, we've been speculating the Amy Autumn theme, and again, haven't seen the 8th episode. Hopefully it's revealed then, but her mom, if we're assuming this is the same, one of the same person, did Rebecca go into the void and she went to another time, which she gave birth to another version of Amy in another world, or she, again, my mind is just tripping over this whole, I got to finish this review before I can watch the 8th episode and get to these damn answers. But again, who is her mom? Was it Rebecca? Was it someone else? Let's discuss that theory in the comments. Getting back into the conversation, Frank has some funny business going on as you see Frank congratulating Joy on her recent reveals of the Abbott boy. And he goes into this whole conversation about some funny business on his land, and he wants her to take a look at it. And he mentions something about your mom's got this in the pipe and everything about that. It was just a weird conversation. But it leads her to go into his land a little bit later, which we'll get into that discussion. Getting back into Mama Bear finds his cub. Gotta admit, this scene with the bear and Cece and the big bear mom taking a little cub felt a little odd to me. It felt clumsy. There's a lot of clumsy moments in this episode. This being one of them, as we see the big bear attacking her, she shoots it. Don't get me wrong, I felt heartbroken seeing that bear being killed and walking away after finding its cub being dead, and now it died. I know, and by the way, shout out to you all that gave me that filled me in. I asked the question, why the hell did she let the cub bite her last week? Well, you all tied it to the scene prior to that when they were talking about the Bible and the bears eating the people, so that lines up perfectly. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little I don't feel too fully invested in her subplot with her forgiveness and her, keeping these lies. It feels forced. It feels like it's thrown into the narrative, and it really doesn't have a lot of interesting moments to me besides being like, what the F is going on? But let me know how you all feel about Cecilia's side story, and if you all are engaged to it. Obviously, I hope it gets a big payoff in episode 8. But as of right now, how do you all feel about that plot? Let's have that discussion in the comments. Getting back into I Had a Vision of You, we see Billy pays a visit to Autumn and tells her that he ate inside of his dad's rock, and he had a vision of her, and he wants to be on her side. He tells her that she was changing the world, and she was a mother of earth, and goes on to want to be a follower of hers. She tells him that Royal was in the vision, which she confirms, and she tells Billy to stop him before she stops him, and he will do whatever she wants him to do. And this is another weird moment. This kissing scene has to be one of the most awkward, most weirdest kissing scenes I've ever seen. They were like putting their tongues in each other's mouth, like very weird. They were almost kissing like they've never kissed someone before, like almost like they were kids. And there is something to say about Billy, like being very like kind of childish in regards to the way he carries himself, the way he kind of talks. He seems very kind of off, in my opinion, like very childlike mindset. And the same could be said about Autumn, but that kiss was weird. The spit and it was pretty gross too, if I'm not gonna lie. Very weird scene, but again, another interesting way to use the camera to pan into this very intimate moment between these two characters. Let me know your thoughts on that scene as we see Autumn say to him, will you be mine, as she marks him with her favorite mark, and we know it's the sign of the app. And I'm just thinking to myself, what the hell? You know what? You guys are perfect for each other because you're two psychotic individuals. But getting back into it, don't be silly, Goose. Get in the car. As we see Royal is having some car issues, and Billy invites him in. He's there to rescue him and offer Royal a ride. He asks him about the void, which he is fully aware of because Autumn has filled him in. And this is where we see Billy Boy, who's becoming a man right in front of us. From one scene to the next, he has a gun, who is scaring the hell out of Royal. And I don't blame Royal, because I will say, Billy, that actor is doing a great job and really creeps me out sometimes, and this was one of them. And Billy takes him back to that same icing rink we saw at the beginning of the episode. Billy wants him to admit to trying to kill Autumn, and he wants him to ultimately apologize, which he does. And I'm not going to lie, Josh Brolin in that moment, when he's yelling and he's upset, man, Josh Brolin, you are a fantastic actor. I do have a gripe and a criticism about his acting a little bit later, but in this scene, he was phenomenal. Going back into it, Billy doesn't kill him, but he tells him to leave Autumn alone. And more importantly, he tells him something bad is going to happen to your granddaughter. What the hell does that mean, Billy? Especially if Autumn and Amy are two of the same, what will happen will we transition to a very interesting moment here. I can go with her as we see Perry having a really cool moment and a sentiment moment with his daughter. He's spoiling her with ice cream and fries, and we see young Amy asks Perry, if mom comes back, can I go with her? Because obviously she's understanding her dad is probably going to jail for life. So if mama comes back, can I live with her? And we see Perry say, yes, you can go with her. But this moment here, and again, I talked about the transitions and the camera movement. I absolutely loved it in this scene. We see, which might symbolize Amy transitioning into the adult version of Autumn, who's in the bathroom at this point, having this kind of montage and speaking into Imogen Poots, who's owning this role. She's hyping herself up about this speech about the portal of the future ties into the past, and she will own it. She's the gatekeeper of the unknown. She will be the shepherd of the night. As we see her walking up to Perry, I have to tell you something about your father. Again, I cannot applaud enough the Tarantino-like sense of the scene where it's just zooming in and the motions and the movement. And Imogen Poots, when she was in the bathroom doing that montage and doing, I should say, that monologue, she is eating this role up. What a fantastic performance in that scene. Let me know your thoughts on it. As we get back into it, really appreciate it and highlighting the showing of Joy in her beautiful heritage. But again, it kind of goes into the conversation that she does not want to give up this case. She is so fixated on figuring out what is actually going on. And she's, I think in this moment when we see this scene, she's looking at, her people dancing in celebration, doing their ritual. I think she's going back to her not getting justice as a young kid. And when she told us that story, when she told Matt that story, she is gung-ho on figuring out what is really going on. Let's get back into time to go into the unknown. We see Luke putting a pillow over his dad's face, trying to kill him as Billy comes in and tries to stop his older brother, but Luke ultimately overpowers him as he says to him, what are you going to do, sing, boy? Which, I'm not going to lie, that scene was weird. There's a couple scenes in this episode, I'm like, this is so weird. I think it's meant to be weird, but it's just too weird for me in this particular moment with the animals surrounding him. I'm like, what in the hell? This is such a weird scene. The animals watching them. Wayne wakes up watching them. All these families are wackos, if I'm being honest. But going back to Joy, who arrives to Frank's home as she sees the same symbols that we know that Autumn has seen about connecting to the Abbott family, Joy heads around to the back of his house, only to find a crack in the land leading her to the unknown potentially. Let's discuss that in the comments as well. Go back to Let's Go for a Ride with Perry and Royal. Did she tell you, as Perry tells Royal that he knows about the void, and Royal goes into him running away as a child? Let's get into this backstory. We get a flashback of young Royal who is hunting with his father, and we see that he accidentally shoots his dad. And immediately I said to myself, when he goes back to his mom and his sister, this is the 1700s. Well, we find out that this is in a completely different decade. It's revealed to be 1586. He reappears into 1968, which we get that cut back of him coming out of the hole, which we saw that a couple episodes ago. I was pretty excited when that moment happened. Like, oh, it's all kind of tying together. And man, 1500s now to the 19. Oh my goodness, what a great reveal. As we see, Autumn knows as Perry tells him that Rebecca is not gone. There is a plan, and we see Perry wants to be saved as he jumps in the void, and we see the void disappear. And this is a criticism I have, and this was the cringiest zoom in that I've seen in this show. We see in Josh Brolin, fantastic actor, the direction he was given and the choice that he did in this scene when he's just like and screaming and yelling and Autumn's watching the background. I'm like, this is really bad. This is not a great performance by Josh Brolin, nor is it a great direction, nor is it a great camera movement. Again, it was just the way that it looked in, and again, him and it was just, I didn't like the ending. And ultimately, when it comes down to my review of this episode, they better stick the landing next week, or I should say in 10 minutes when I watch episode 8. They better stick the landing, because right now, this was a setup episode, no doubt. Not a lot of answers, a lot of questions still posed about Rebecca, the void disappearing. Like, what does that mean? It ties into Krotos as he talks about at episode 1 and him creating that hole from heaven and earth. So I think there's a lot of correlations to he summoned that hole when he was a child, but how does he have these abilities to do so, and how is Perry able to disappear? There's a lot to be answered in this 8th episode. Fingers crossed they stick the landing, but overall, the way I'm feeling about this episode right now, not a big fan. I could end up liking it if episode 8 pays off. With that being said, I'm about to press play on it. Let me know your thoughts on the 7th episode in the comments. Pros, cons, thoughts, theories, deeper meanings. What worked, what didn't work. Let's talk about it in the comments. And again, by the time this is uploaded, I will be releasing my review for episode 8, which I'm excited to watch. Thank you all for watching this review. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. Before you leave, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my future content, which, as you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my review for episode 8. Check out my other reviews for this show. We'll catch you all on the next breakdown.